All right, well, new developments in the college admissions scandal. Actresses Felicity Huffman, as well as some others, and 12 parents are pleading guilty to bribery and other forms of fraud after being charged in the scheme, according to court records. A statement from Huffman reads in part, quote, "I am in full acceptance of my guilt and with deep regret and shame over what I have done. I accept full responsibility for my actions and will accept the consequences that stem from those actions." So joining us is criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Jeff Gold. Hello, Jeff. Thanks again for coming back on the show. I want to ask you, though, because we're hearing differing opinions here. Huffman could serve a maximum of 10 months in prison. What are your thoughts that that actually happens?
Well, she could, but first of all, how about that statement? Definitely written by a screenwriter, if you ask me. It was a great statement as a defense attorney as well as a former prosecutor. I'd love that statement from my defendant. And it was calculated, as is the plea, to do everything possible not to go to prison. She pled guilty to one count. That's called a charge bargain. The government doesn't give you a plea bargain where they say an amount of time, but they give you a charge bargain, and that limits how much you can get. So it seems to me that those that pled, and remember, there's 20 that haven't pled, but those that have pled guilty have calculated this is about the government wanting to make a splash, wanting to stop this type of activity, having these high-profile names involved, probably did that in and of itself. The bottom of her calculation for the guidelines will be 0. Yes, she could get 10 months, but she's on the right track. She's accepted responsibility. She's publicly stated it very eloquently, even if it wasn't written by her. Well, we don't know that. But nevertheless, she's on the road to no prison, if you ask me.
Jeff, let me ask you, though, in terms of what we're seeing in terms of the other parents joining in that plea, is that something where it might actually help her or the rest of the parents more?
Most likely, the government gave that offer to almost everyone that was in a similar situation. There are a few defendants that are not similar, but those that are in similar circumstances were probably all offered this. Some of those, like Felicity Huffman, took it because their lawyers said in the federal system, they have so much evidence against their defendants. It is better to accept responsibility, get out of this as quickly as possible and move on with your life, because if you try to accept responsibility now, you will get no jail and you will be able to move on with your life. The other defendants, I think one by one, will fall eventually.
Jeff, I've got a question. What does this say? What happens after these pleas come and go? I'm curious what happens at these universities. What happens to the students? I mean, there's got to be a next step here.
Well, there may be. Now, that's number one. Some steps have been taken internally by the universities who've said that they would address it. It does not appear that the federal government is looking at the students themselves and saying, look, your mom and your dad did this. They're sort of responsible for this. And most of the kids are probably going to walk away with it, except for some may lose their privileges at the school and may not be able to be in that school. That's a very likely consequence. And some schools have begun to address it, but we don't know the full consequences for the students.